average man would have been pinned 20 times by now.
Sunset flip, 1, 2, and he's out again.
Back and forth, back and
Ricky
forth.
Steamboat's journey to wrestling stardom was filled with incredible highs, but his dream of becoming a world champion was heartbreakingly cut short. Known for his unmatched skill, work ethic, and genuine connection with fans, Steamboat seemed destined for the very top. Yet behind the scenes, the wrestling business wasn't always kind to those who stayed true to themselves. Promises of a world title push that could have cemented his legacy were quietly derailed by politics, corporate demands, and a wrestling culture that often punished integrity over ego. This is the tragic, true-life story of how one of the greatest wrestlers of all time saw his ultimate chance slip away. Not because of lack of talent, but because the business wasn't ready to fully embrace him. Roots in discipline. A childhood shaped by the military. Born on February 20th, 1953 in West Point, New York, Richard Henry Blood grew up in a household defined by military service and constant change. His father's commitment to the U.S. military meant that the family rarely stayed in one place for long. From bases in the United States to postings overseas, young Richard was exposed to a wide variety of cultures, people, and experiences. This constant movement gave him a broader perspective on life, something few future wrestling stars could claim. This itinerant upbringing wasn't always easy. Military life demanded discipline, respect, and resilience, values that Richard absorbed deeply. But it also meant a childhood filled with transitions, goodbyes, and new beginnings. Wrestling at this point was nowhere on his radar. Richard's early dreams were not about fame or championships. They were simply about adapting and thriving wherever life took him. The tragic death of his father, who died fighting a fire, added another layer of hardship and responsibility. Losing a parent early forced Richard to mature quickly, grounding him with a sense of duty and a personal code that would later influence his wrestling career. Wrestling was not his destiny from birth. It was something life nudged him toward, almost by accident. From amateur champion to wrestling rookie. In high school, Richard's athletic talents began to shine. He wasn't just any athlete. He became a Florida state champion in amateur wrestling, a discipline that laid the groundwork for his technical skills in the professional world. This success wasn't the result of a lifelong dream to become a wrestling superstar, but simply the natural outcome of his physical gifts and competitive spirit. Amateur wrestling instilled in him fundamentals like balance, leverage, and timing, skills that would later set him apart in the pro wrestling ring. But unlike many young wrestlers who idolized their heroes and dreamt of stardom from a young age, Richard approached wrestling with a practical mindset. It was something he excelled at, but not the defining goal of his life. The wrestling business came knocking unexpectedly, thanks to a connection through his girlfriend. She knew someone in the industry, and that introduction led to an opportunity Richard hadn't sought out, but was willing to explore. This accidental entry meant he approached professional wrestling as an outsider, free from the emotional baggage or preconceived notions held by those who grew up dreaming of wrestling glory. The grueling baptism. Training under Verne Gagne. Richard's first real test as a wrestler came when he traveled to Minnesota to train under the legendary Verne Gagne. Gagne's training camp was infamous, renowned for its brutal, no-nonsense approach, designed to weed out anyone who wasn't completely dedicated. The training was more than just physical drills. It was a relentless process of breaking down the trainees mentally and physically, only to rebuild them stronger and smarter. The pace was punishing. Long hours, intense physical punishment, and a constant pressure to improve or be left behind. Richard's experience at Gagne's camp was transformative and punishing. He lost 40 pounds during his training, a testament not only to the sheer physical exertion, but also to the mental stress of such a demanding program. Many hopefuls quit before completing the grueling regimen, but Richard's military background equipped him with resilience and discipline few could match. This period was less about teaching flashy moves and more about forging the mindset and endurance required to survive and succeed in professional wrestling's unforgiving world. The weight loss symbolized the sacrifice and commitment needed to transition from athlete to entertainer, from outsider to insider. A unique perspective. The outsider's advantage and challenge. Richard's diverse background gave him a unique perspective that set him apart from many of his peers. He had literally seen the world before stepping into a wrestling ring, giving him a maturity and worldly understanding many young wrestlers lacked. To Richard, wrestling was a business, not just a dream or a game. This pragmatic view helped him focus on the craft with precision, but also created friction with the wrestling world's old-school mentality, which prized loyalty, obedience, and a willingness to conform above all else. He wasn't interested in sacrificing his values or bending to every whim demanded by promoters. His upbringing instilled a strong sense of personal integrity and self-respect. While other wrestlers were willing to sell out or take unsavory storylines for the sake of their careers, Richard held firm to his principles. This balance between athletic excellence and personal conviction would be both his greatest strength and his biggest obstacle. It allowed him to stand out as a performer, but also put him at odds with the backstage politics and power players who controlled wrestling's territorial landscape. Entering the territorial system, a harsh new world. Richard's entry into professional wrestling truly began when he stepped into the territorial system, a sprawling network of regional promotions that dominated the wrestling business before national consolidation. These territories were brutal proving grounds where wrestlers traveled endlessly, performing night after night for small, often unpredictable crowds. One such territory was Florida, run by promoter Eddie Graham. Graham was a shrewd businessman who knew how to sell a story and market a wrestler. When he spotted Richard's potential, Graham decided to give him an identity that would immediately resonate with fans. The fictional nephew of Sammy Steamboat, a beloved wrestler from years before. Richard had little say in this rebranding. Wrestling promoters in the territorial system controlled every aspect of a wrestler's character, from their name to their backstory. The Steamboat name was a marketing tool, a way to generate instant credibility and recognition by tapping into nostalgia and local fan loyalty. This was Richard's first harsh lesson in wrestling business reality. Your real identity mattered far less than what promoters could package and sell to audiences. The Ricky Steamboat persona was crafted to fit market demands, including the popular martial arts craze sweeping through America in the 1970s. Wrestling life on the road. The grueling grind. Life on the road for wrestlers like Ricky Steamboat was far from glamorous. It was a relentless grind that tested physical stamina, mental toughness, and personal sacrifice. In the days before national television deals and multi-million-dollar contracts, wrestlers were itinerant performers, constantly traveling hundreds, even thousands, of miles between small towns, dusty arenas, and modest gyms. The schedule was brutal. They often worked multiple shows a week, hopping from one venue to another with barely enough time to catch their breath. The pay? It was inconsistent at best, and for many, downright precarious. Promoters might promise guaranteed money, but those guarantees were often empty words if the crowds didn't show up. When ticket sales underperformed, wrestlers' paychecks took a hit. On top of that, wrestlers were responsible for covering their own travel expenses, gas, bus fares, or plane tickets, along with lodging and food. Even if you were working multiple events a week, the money sometimes barely covered costs. For many, this meant scraping by, living out of cheap motels, and eating on the go. For Ricky Steamboat, those tough early years on the road were formative. Despite the hardships, Florida's vibrant wrestling scene became fertile ground where he could hone and develop his craft. Unlike many wrestlers of the era who relied on brute strength or brawling tactics, Steamboat leaned into a smooth, technical wrestling style that highlighted his agility, grace, and athleticism. His wrestling wasn't just about brute force, it was a performance, a ballet of strength, precision, and speed. A genuine bond, Steamboat and J.A. Youngblood. One of the rarest and most genuine relationships in Steamboat's career was his friendship with fellow wrestler J.A. Youngblood. In an industry notorious for backstage politics, rivalries, and manufactured alliances, the bond between Steamboat and Youngblood was real and heartfelt. They traveled together extensively, navigating the ups and downs of the wrestling lifestyle side by side. From long road trips to shared motel rooms, they supported each other through the exhaustion, disappointment, and physical pain that came with the territory. But their connection went beyond the practical. It was a friendship rooted in mutual respect and understanding of what the life demanded. This authentic relationship translated into undeniable chemistry inside the ring. When Steamboat and Youngblood teamed up, the audience could sense something genuine. Their teamwork wasn't just scripted, it was a reflection of their off-camera friendship. This sincerity made them one of the most popular tag teams of their time, and it's a testament to how important genuine human connections can be in a business often marked by artifice. Standing firm, Steamboat's principles clash with wrestling politics. Steamboat's integrity wasn't just evident in his style or friendships, it defined his entire approach to wrestling. He was a man of principle who refused to bend or compromise his values simply for the sake of money or exposure. While many wrestlers were willing to do whatever was necessary to climb the ladder, embracing any storyline, angle, or gimmick, Steamboat held his ground. This steadfastness earned him enormous respect among fellow wrestlers, many of whom admired his dedication to honesty and craft. But it also put him at odds with promoters and bookers who expected total compliance with their creative direction. Wrestling backstage politics was a complex maze of favors, alliances, and power plays, and Steamboat's reluctance to play those games sometimes made him a difficult figure in the locker room. He preferred focusing on what he knew best, connecting with fans through his wrestling, not through backstage manipulation. This approach, while admirable, also meant Steamboat sometimes missed opportunities or faced obstacles that politically savvy wrestlers navigated with ease. Still, his commitment to his principles never wavered, shaping a career that was as much about character as it was about performance. The Big Leap, Jim Crockett Promotions and a Rocky Start. In 1977, Ricky Steamboat took a pivotal step by joining Jim Crockett Promotions, JCP, a major regional wrestling powerhouse with lucrative television deals and large venues. It was a big leap from the small-town gyms and local shows he'd been performing in, and it brought with it new challenges. The stakes were higher, more fans, bigger audiences, and greater expectations. But with the bigger spotlight also came a more complex and cutthroat backstage environment. Politics ran deep in JCP, and wrestlers had to navigate a complicated landscape of alliances, rivalries, and power dynamics. From the start, Steamboat's talent caught the attention of Ric Flair, who was already JCP's top star and one of the most magnetic personalities in wrestling. Flair's recognition was both a blessing and a challenge. Their legendary rivalry would become one of wrestling's most celebrated storylines, but it almost derailed Steamboat's career before it really began. The tension between the two men was palpable, and their rivalry was as much about wrestling as it was about clashing personalities and contrasting lifestyles. Flair's flamboyance and Steamboat's modesty made for a compelling narrative, but it also created friction backstage, where loyalty and ego often influenced decisions as much as talent. The endorsement that changed everything. When Ric Flair, the flamboyant nature boy and undisputed kingpin of Jim Crockett Promotions, looked at Ricky Steamboat, He didn't just see a promising wrestler, he saw a rare package. Flair described Steamboat as a guy that's handsome with a great body, a nice guy, and could wrestle from day one. Coming from Flair, the biggest star in the company and one of the most charismatic figures in professional wrestling, this was more than just a compliment. It was a golden ticket. Flair's endorsement wasn't handed out lightly. It was a powerful seal of approval that opened doors for Steamboat almost overnight. In a business where who you knew mattered as much as what you could do inside the ring, having the top star in your corner could mean the difference between struggling in obscurity and headlining major events. For Steamboat, Flair's backing translated into better match opportunities, more television exposure, and the chance to work alongside some of the era's biggest names. It was a fast track to prominence that might have otherwise taken years of grinding through the ranks. The brutal reality behind the spotlight, but the path wasn't glamorous or easy. Wrestling in the late 1970s and early 1980s was a physically punishing career, and Steamboat's early matches with Flair were proof of just how dangerous the craft could be. The two men developed a chemistry in the ring that was nothing short of electric, and the intensity of their bouts often pushed both performers to their physical limits. One particularly harrowing moment stands out as a stark reminder of the risks involved. In a brutal sequence, Flair rubbed Steamboat's face against the unforgiving concrete floor just outside the ring. The concrete was rough, jagged, and utterly merciless, an environment far removed from the padded canvas of the wrestling ring. The friction was so severe it could have torn the skin from Steamboat's face or caused serious damage to his eyes. It was a dangerous spot, one that could have ended his career or worse. This wasn't mindless violence or reckless showboating. Instead, it was a calculated risk born from a deep trust between the two men, trust that allowed them to put their bodies on the line in service of creating moments that would be remembered for years. The goal was always to deliver a believable, thrilling performance that captivated the audience, even if it meant enduring genuine pain. Two worlds collide, Flair and Steamboat's contrasting lives. Off-camera, the differences between Flair and Steamboat couldn't have been more pronounced. Flair embodied the character he played, a living embodiment of excess and flamboyance. His life was a whirlwind of expensive suits, luxury cars, and wild parties. Flair's charisma extended beyond the ring. He lived out loud, unapologetically indulging in the high life that matched his nature boy persona. For him, wrestling was not just a job, but a lifestyle of spectacle and indulgence. Steamboat, on the other hand, was the polar opposite. He was the family man, grounded and focused on the simple pleasures of life outside the squared circle. Where Flair reveled in nightlife, Steamboat treasured quiet evenings at home with his wife and children. He approached wrestling not as a lifestyle, but as a profession, a craft to be perfected and respected. His modesty and dedication to family values made him stand apart in an industry that often glorified excess. This contrast wasn't just a storyline or marketing ploy, it was genuine. Their real personalities fueled the authenticity of their rivalry, making their matches resonate more deeply with audiences. Fans saw not only a clash of wrestling styles, but a clash of fundamentally different worldviews, a humble, hard-working underdog facing off against a brash, confident superstar. A rivalry that made wrestling history, and its price. Their feud wasn't just good television, it was a major financial success for Jim Crockett Promotions. Fans packed arenas and tuned into televised events, eager to witness the clash between Steamboat's clean-cut heroism and Flair's arrogant showmanship. Their battles generated serious revenue, proving that wrestling could be both art and business. But success came with a hidden cost for Steamboat. The promotional machine quickly pigeonholed him into the role of the perennial good guy, the family man who always played by the rules. This pigeonhole limited his creative freedom. Attempts to experiment with his character or explore new directions were met with resistance from promoters who feared alienating fans who adored the familiar narrative. Steamboat's identity was shaped as much by business decisions as by his own talent. The wrestling world can be unforgiving to those who stray from the formula that sells tickets, and Steamboat's excellence in the ring became a double-edged sword, one that locked him into a specific persona that didn't always reflect the full complexity of the man himself. Establishing credibility. The NWA Television Championship. For Ricky Steamboat, rising through the ranks wasn't just about having an engaging persona or memorable rivalries. It was about proving, night after night, that he could deliver in the ring when it counted. A defining moment in this journey was his reign as the NWA Television Champion in North Carolina, a significant milestone that marked his transition from promising talent to a proven star. Within Jim Crockett Promotions, the NWA Television Championship wasn't just another title to hold. It carried weight. Unlike many belts that were defended sporadically or in special events, the Television Championship was a regular feature on the company's weekly broadcasts, giving its holder consistent visibility in front of a broad audience. This wasn't just about winning matches. It was about being a steady, dependable performer who could carry the company's image week in and week out. For Steamboat, this meant more than just physical ability. The role demanded stamina, charisma, and the mental fortitude to connect with fans across various markets. His performances during this time were a showcase of his technical brilliance and storytelling ability. Whether it was executing a flawless dragon suplex or selling a near fall with genuine emotion, Steamboat's matches were a masterclass in wrestling psychology. The crowd's reactions weren't just polite applause. They were genuine, enthusiastic responses to a performer who earned their respect. Steamboat's WWF debut, a dream and a challenge. When Ricky Steamboat made his debut in the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, in 1986, it was a dream realized. The WWF was a vastly different beast than the regional territories. It was a global corporate machine, with Vince McMahon at the helm, determined to transform wrestling into a mainstream entertainment juggernaut. The WWF's environment was far more regimented and demanding. Every aspect of a wrestler's life was tightly controlled to protect the company's image and maximize profits. Character consistency wasn't optional, it was enforced. Wrestlers had to be available for grueling schedules of television tapings, live events, and promotional appearances, often with little regard for personal time or family commitments. The timing of Steamboat's arrival couldn't have been better for his dragon character. Martial arts movies were wildly popular in the 1980s, and the WWF capitalized on this trend, emphasizing Steamboat's martial arts-inspired wrestling style. Elaborate costumes, catchy entrance music, and slick promotional materials helped craft a persona that was both marketable and entertaining. The high cost of corporate loyalty. When Ricky Steamboat stepped into the WWF in the mid-1980s, he found himself in a world that was vastly different from the regional wrestling territories where he had honed his craft. The WWF wasn't just a wrestling promotion. It was a sprawling corporate entertainment machine, a well-oiled production where every detail, from a wrestler's character to their personal behavior, was carefully managed and controlled. And the unspoken rule of this world was loyalty to the company above all else. For Steamboat, who had built his career on a strong sense of integrity and a deep commitment to family, this corporate culture was a tough adjustment. WWF expected its wrestlers to put the company's needs first, no matter what was happening in their personal lives. That meant staying in character not just in the ring, but everywhere, backstage, on television interviews, and even in public appearances. It meant being available for a grueling schedule of television tapings, house shows, and promotional events, often with little notice and little rest. This demand for absolute dedication was more than just exhausting. It was physically and mentally punishing. The company's attitude toward injuries and pain was brutally clear. Wrestling was a tough business, and real pain was part of the job. You didn't get the luxury of healing or taking time off. You pushed through injuries because your place on the roster depended on it. WrestleMania 3, the match that made history. The apex of Steamboat's WWF career came at WrestleMania 3 in March 1987, a moment that many wrestling fans and historians consider one of the greatest matches ever performed. Facing off against Randy Macho Man Savage, Steamboat delivered a performance that combined flawless athleticism, storytelling, and emotion, creating a match that transcended the sport and became an enduring classic. But behind the scenes, this match wasn't just two athletes throwing down. It was a carefully orchestrated spectacle. The WWF's production team worked hand in hand with Steamboat and Savage to choreograph nearly every move, aiming to craft a story that would captivate the audience and showcase their unique strengths. Every suplex, every high-flying crossbody, every near fall was meticulously planned to build tension and excitement. When the final bell rang and Steamboat emerged victorious, capturing the Intercontinental Championship, it was more than just a title change. The Intercontinental Championship was known affectionately as the Workers' Championship, because it was often held by the wrestlers most respected for their technical skill and in-ring excellence. Winning that belt was a public acknowledgement that Steamboat belonged at the top of the wrestling world. The double-edged sword of championship glory, yet with the glory of the championship came a new kind of pressure, one that tested Steamboat's personal values more than any opponent ever could. Being the Intercontinental Champion wasn't just about performing well on television. It meant being the face of the company in countless promotional appearances, media events, and relentless travel schedules. The WWF expected its champions to be available almost 24/7, living and breathing the company's image and demands. For Steamboat, this was a difficult collision of worlds. His family was everything to him. Unlike many wrestlers who embraced the full-throttle party lifestyle that often accompanied wrestling fame, Steamboat was a devoted husband and father, committed to his wife Bonnie and their growing family. He wanted to be present, to support them, and to maintain a balance between his career and his home life. But the WWF's corporate machine didn't leave much room for balance. The grueling travel schedule, combined with constant appearances and the expectation of absolute loyalty, meant family time was often sacrificed. Steamboat saw fellow wrestlers who had given up relationships and personal well-being in the name of success, and he began to question if he was willing to pay the same price. Trapped by a character and an era. This moment also highlighted a deeper challenge that Steamboat faced. His image had become both a blessing and a burden. Throughout his career, he had embodied the quintessential babyface, the humble, hard-working hero who fought with honor and always put family first. Fans loved him for this, and promoters valued the dependable character he portrayed. But the wrestling world was changing. By the late 1980s, audiences were beginning to crave more complex characters, edgy storylines, and morally ambiguous heroes and villains. Wrestling was evolving into a spectacle of larger-than-life personalities, dramatic twists, and corporate spectacle. Steamboat, with his principled stance and family-first values, found himself caught between two worlds. His integrity earned admiration, but also limited his creative freedom. The WWF's corporate demands and appetite for relentless availability meant there was little room for the kind of nuanced evolution Steamboat might have wanted for his character. His story is a powerful reminder of the often unseen costs behind the spectacle. The price of loyalty to a wrestling company like the WWF wasn't just measured in matches won or titles held. It was measured in personal sacrifices, missed moments, and the challenge of staying true to oneself in a world that demanded conformity. The price of staying true. Ricky Steamboat's wrestling career is more than just a record of matches and championships. It's a powerful story about talent, heart, and the struggle to remain true in an unforgiving industry. From his early days in the territories to his intense rivalry with Ric Flair, Steamboat demonstrated not only extraordinary skill, but also a deep respect for the craft and those around him. Their relationship was a testament to how mentorship and genuine chemistry can elevate wrestling to an art form. When Steamboat moved to the WWF, he stepped into a world dominated by corporate expectations that often clashed with his personal values. The relentless demands for loyalty, availability, and self-sacrifice tested him like never before. His legendary matches and championship victories showed he belonged at the top, but his commitment to family and principles ultimately put him at odds with the business. Steamboat's story is a poignant reminder that success in professional wrestling doesn't come without a price. It highlights the tension between personal integrity and corporate demands, and the courage it takes to stand firm. In an industry built on spectacle and compromise, Ricky Steamboat remains a symbol of authenticity, a wrestler who chose to stay true to himself, no matter the cost. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more valuable updates.